I found out why Dad always locked the basement, my brother said, showing me the key after the funeral. What we discovered down there explained why Mom left us when we were kids and why she never came back. I'm Jenna, 30 years old, female, and I didn't cry at my dad's funeral. I kept waiting for that tidal wave everyone warns you about, the one where you finally let yourself be the little kid again and sob into someone's scratchy suit jacket. But it never came. I sat there with my palms pressed to my knees, counting the creases in the black fabric, and felt static. Like I was a bad radio station. White noise and old rules. Greg, 62 years old, male, my dad, was the kind of man who treated life like a checklist. Oil changes at exactly 3,000 miles. Shoes lined up heel to toe by the door. The basement door locked every night at 9 with the kind of click that felt like a period at the end of a sentence you didn't get to read. We grew up thinking that sound meant safety, that Dad's workshop was sacred. You learn to worship your jail when the warden is the one keeping you fed. Matt, 27 years old, male, my little brother, was better at pretending than me. He could laugh with Dad at the TV and still catch my eye over the bowl of microwave popcorn like, "You good?" We used to sit on the top step of the basement stairs when we were kids, backs against the door, listening to whatever was humming down there. Fans, a dehumidifier, and the dull thud of Dad moving around. One time I slipped a note under the door that said, "What are you doing?" It came back crumpled and blank. He'd slid it back without answering. Elena, 56 years old, female, our mom, left when I was 8 and Matt was 5. She didn't slam the door. She didn't take anything but her purse and the Polaroid of us at the lake. Matt on her shoulders, me holding a green plastic bucket, Dad on the edge of the frame, face turned away. She left a sticky note on the fridge that said, "I can't do this anymore." He stuck it to the inside of the cookbook after. Sometimes it fell out when I was making pasta, and I'd pretend it was a receipt from someplace we'd never been. Dad called her unstable, like it was a medical condition. He told anyone who'd listen that she abandoned us. He kept a photo of their wedding in the hallway, glass cracked across her face like an unhealed wound, and never fixed it. If I moved it, he put it back. Once, after a parent-teacher night, I spun it toward the wall and he made a show of turning it around again, in front of my homeroom teacher. "We don't run from the truth," he said. He looked at me when he said it, not her. Sharon, 49 years old, female, Dad's on and off girlfriend, cried harder than anyone at the funeral. She wore a dress too white for a day like that and clutched the program so tight the ink smudged on her fingers. She's the kind of woman who announces sadness like a fire alarm. When the service ended, she stood by the casket and hugged every single person who filed past, saying, "He was a good man," with watery eyes like she was stamping a passport. She's been living at the house since February. She calls me sweetie and Matt buddy, and once told me, "There are things you'll never understand about your father," like she had a VIP pass to his soul. Back at the house after, the wake was a parade of potato salad and thick silence. Aunt Carol, 60 years old, female, Dad's sister, patrolled the living room like a cop at a high school dance, making sure nobody went down the hallway or opened drawers. Greg liked things neat, she kept saying, as if dust would bring him back. Sharon was already separating Dad's tools into neat piles on the kitchen table, tapping a Sharpie against her teeth. "This old planer should go to Matt," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Unless Jenna wants it for her writing?" She made writing sound like a hobby you age out of. I kept drifting to the hallway, to that wedding photo with the crack. The glass was spidered right over Mom's smile, making it look like light was bursting out of her face. I slipped a thumb under the frame and felt the grit of dust. My chest did this slow, tight ache I recognized, the ache of doors you were never allowed to open. Late, after the casserole people left and Aunt Carol finally relented to sleep, Matt found me in the kitchen with my shoes off, heels black with floor dust. He looked wild-eyed and young, hair flattened from some stranger's consoling hand. "Jen," he said, in that whisper that means, "I'm about to tell you something we can't take back." "What?" He opened his palm. A brass key sat there, old and nicked, the teeth worn smooth in places. My stomach flipped like a coin. "I found out why Dad always locked the basement," my brother said, showing me the key after the funeral. His voice shook, but the words were clean. He kept it in the lining of his suit. There's a seam ripped open. He must have sewn it in. Something cold and electric ran up my spine. The house creaked like it breathed. Somewhere, a fan kicked on. I closed my hand around the key and it was warm from his skin, like a small animal. The hallway seemed longer than it ever had. The locked door waited at the end, paint scuffed where we used to bump our toes. Okay, I said, not sure who I was talking to. Okay? I didn't even answer Daniel at first. We were sitting in Dad's dark living room, the smell of old coffee and stale cigarettes still clinging to the curtains like mold. He held up the little brass key in his palm like it was treasure, like it explained everything. My stomach twisted just looking at it. You're serious, I finally said. Daniel nodded, his eyes bloodshot from the funeral, but there was something sharper underneath his grief. Curiosity. Anger. A need to pry open every lie Dad had nailed shut. You know what this means, right? He whispered. Mom. Why she left. It's all down there. The way he said Mom made me flinch. I hadn't said that word out loud in years. She'd become a ghost in our house, a half-erased photograph. I was 14 when she walked out, Daniel only 10. No note, no goodbye, just gone. We used to invent reasons for her disappearance. She met someone else. She couldn't take Dad's drinking anymore. Maybe she'd died. But we both knew better. There had always been something about that basement. I remembered being a kid, barefoot on the kitchen tile, sneaking down the hall at night to grab water. The basement door would be there, locked, a faint draft breathing through the crack. Once I swear I heard crying. I told Dad, and he smacked me so hard across the face I saw stars. Never talk about that door again, he hissed. And I didn't. Now here was Daniel, twirling the key between his fingers like a coin flip. We have to look. I shook my head. We should just burn the house down, walk away, pretend it never existed. His laugh was bitter. That's what she did, and look where that got us. We sat in silence. The walls creaked. Outside, the world kept going, cars humming past like nothing had shattered inside us. Finally, Daniel stood up. I'm opening it, with or without you. That's always been him, the reckless one. When we were teenagers, he'd climb the water tower just to see the town lights from above. He'd steal Dad's truck at night and drive us into the hills, music blasting, headlights cutting through fog. Me? I was the anchor, the one dragging him back down to earth, terrified he'd fly too close to something we couldn't handle. And now, here he was again, halfway to the basement door, key in hand. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. But I got up and followed him, because the truth was I couldn't let him open that door alone. We stood there, staring at it. The old wood looked swollen from years of humidity. Dad had replaced the knob twice over the years, but the lock was always the same, a dull brass mouth waiting to swallow the key. Daniel slid it in. I swear the sound of metal scraping metal echoed louder than church bells. He looked at me once, just once, like he was checking if I'd stop him. I didn't. The lock clicked. The door creaked open, exhaling a wave of cold, sour air. It smelled like rust and mildew and something else. Something that made my skin crawl. Daniel pulled the chain light. A faint yellow glow flickered down the steps, barely reaching the bottom. I whispered, God, what did he hide down there? Daniel didn't answer. He just started walking down, one step at a time, and I followed, every nerve in my body screaming that we were about to learn something we'd never be able to unlearn. Don't forget to subscribe. The steps groaned under our weight, each one sounding like it might splinter. My hand skimmed the wall, paint rough under my fingertips. That smell, the sour rot mixed with metal, got stronger with every step. My throat closed up around it. Jesus, Matt muttered, covering his mouth with his sleeve. He's been hiding this for years? We reached the bottom. The floor was cement, cold and uneven, patched in places where Dad had poured his own slabs. A single bulb swayed on a chain, buzzing like it was straining to stay alive. The walls were lined with wooden shelves, jars stacked in rows, labels faded to yellow smudges. Some were filled with screws, nails, washers. Others held darker things. Liquids. Thick. Cloudy. One jar looked like it had hair floating inside. My stomach turned. Dad was… What the hell is this? Matt whispered, stepping closer to the shelves. He reached for a jar and I grabbed his wrist. Don't touch it, I snapped, my voice sharper than I meant. He jerked his arm free, eyes flashing at me. What, you think it's cursed? No, I think it's disgusting. The air was damp, pressing against my skin. Cobwebs hung from the ceiling like curtains. In the far corner sat Dad's old workbench, its surface buried under yellowed papers, rusted tools, and a stack of notebooks bound with twine. Matt moved toward it, crunching over something on the floor. He crouched and picked it up, a broken Polaroid. His fingers trembled as he wiped the dust from it. It was a picture of Mom, Elena. Her hair pulled back, smile faint but real. The photo had been torn, ripped right through her face. The other half was missing. I felt my chest tighten, my ears rang. Why would he keep this down here? Matt's voice cracked. I didn't answer because my eyes had already landed on something else, on the far wall. The basement wasn't just a storage space. Someone had built a small room inside it. Thin plywood walls, a door bolted from the outside. The wood was stained darker near the bottom, warped from moisture. Or maybe something else. My legs went weak. That wasn't here when we were kids. Matt looked at me, eyes wide, jaw set. He built it after she left. The words hung heavy between us. He moved toward the small door, and for a second I thought I'd scream at him to stop. But I couldn't, because part of me needed to know. He reached for the bolt. The metal squealed as he slid it back. Inside, the air shifted, stale, suffocating. A smell like rust and old sweat seeped out. Matt pulled the door open. The light barely reached inside, but I saw enough. A chair bolted to the floor. Leather straps hanging limp. A metal tray with tools on it, rust blooming across their edges. In the corner, a blanket balled up, stiff with age. I staggered back. Oh my God! Matt didn't move. He just stood there, staring into that small, suffocating room. His voice was hollow when he spoke. This is why she left. Matt stepped inside the little room before I could stop him. His shoes scraped against the concrete floor, stirring up dust that made the air taste metallic. The light bulb above us swung lazily, shadows crawling across the walls. Don't, I said, my throat dry. He didn't answer. He crouched beside the chair, fingers hovering over the straps. They were stiff, cracked with age, but the buckles still gleamed faintly like they'd been polished. That detail made my stomach twist. It meant Dad came down here often. Matt touched the blanket in the corner. It crumbled a little in his hand, threads breaking off like ash. Beneath it lay a small stack of notebooks, edges curled from damp. He picked one up. His voice shook as he read the first page out loud. Rules for order. He flipped another. She doesn't listen. She forgets. She talks back. How many times must I repeat myself? Matt's face went pale. This is him. This is Dad. I grabbed the book from him. The handwriting was his, neat, angry, every letter sharp like it had been carved instead of written. I skimmed page after page, bile rising in my throat. Notes about punishments, notes about corrections, notes about her. Elena resists, must learn. I couldn't breathe. Matt slammed the notebook shut and hurled it across the room. It hit the wall with a dull thud, pages splaying open. She knew, he said, voice breaking. Mom knew what he was becoming. That's why she ran. I pressed my hand to my chest, trying to keep my ribs from collapsing inward. The chair, the straps, the blanket, the notebooks, and the photo of her, torn in half. She hadn't left us. She'd escaped him. The house suddenly felt alive, like Greg was still in it, watching. The cracked wedding photo upstairs. The silence at dinner. The way he'd policed every movement, every word. It all clicked, every piece fitting into a picture I didn't want to see. Matt grabbed the rest of the notebooks, shoving them into a pile. We can't just leave this here. Sharon will find it. Aunt Carol will protect him, even now. They'll twist it. Say we made it up. They'll say Mom was unstable, that she abandoned us. Exactly. Like they always did. His eyes burned. We have to show someone. The police, maybe. My stomach lurched at the thought of dragging our mother's ghost into a courtroom, of reporters and whispers and Sharon crying to anyone who'd listen about Greg the Saint. No one's going to believe us, I said. Then we make them believe. I looked at him, my little brother, trembling with fury, clutching Dad's filthy secrets in his hands. For the first time, I saw Greg's fire in his face, the same stubbornness, the same heat. But it wasn't aimed at us. It was aimed back at Greg, at the lie he'd built. The bulb flickered again, buzzing like a dying insect. My eyes darted to the shelves, to a jar half hidden behind the others. Something pale floated inside, something that looked horribly like a tooth. I grabbed Matt's arm. We need to get out of here. He followed my gaze. His expression hardened. He tucked the notebooks under his arm, then marched out of the little room. I stumbled after him, the sour air clinging to my skin. When we reached the top of the stairs, we heard it. A knock at the front door. Sharon's voice, sweet and sharp. "Kids? You down there?" Matt froze. The notebook slipped in his grip. And in that moment, I knew. We weren't just holding Dad's secret anymore. We were holding a war. Don't forget to subscribe. Update. Wow. I didn't expect so many of you to even care about my rambling. I posted this thinking maybe a couple strangers would say, "Sorry for your loss," and move on. But instead, I woke up to hundreds of comments and messages. A lot of you said the same thing. Burn the house down. Tempting, not gonna lie. But I don't think I could stand in front of the flames without hearing his voice telling me I was being dramatic. Fire would feel like letting him win. Some of you went full detective and asked if I'd called the police yet. No, not yet. Partly because I don't know what exactly I'd even say. Hi, I just found my dead father's basement dungeon complete with notebooks about how he corrected my mom who's been missing for 20 years. They'd laugh me off the phone, or worse, look at me like I was crazy, just like everyone did when I was a kid. Others of you told me to protect my brother at all costs. I needed that reminder. Matt's the one who ripped this wound open, but he's also the one holding it together with his bare hands. He's angry, and underneath that, I think he's terrified. We both are. Anyway, what happened after the last thing I wrote? When Sharon knocked on the door, my whole body locked up. Matt shoved the notebooks under his jacket, hissed at me not to say a word. He marched up the stairs like nothing was wrong, swung the basement door shut just as Sharon let herself in with that chirpy, sweetie buddy voice she always uses. She wrinkled her nose. "What's that smell?" I swear my heart stopped. The smell of mildew, rust, and God knows what else was practically clinging to us like a second skin. Matt coughed and said we were just checking the water heater, making sure the pipes didn't freeze this winter. Sharon nodded, like that was the most heroic act in the world, and offered us leftover funeral sandwiches. If she noticed the dust on Matt's jeans or the way I was shaking, she didn't say anything. But her eyes lingered too long on the basement door, and when she finally walked away, I couldn't shake the feeling that she knew something. Later that night, Matt spread the notebooks across my bed. We went through them one by one, page after page. Rules, punishments, notes about our mom. The handwriting got more erratic the further in we went. He wrote about how she tested his patience, how she wouldn't submit, how she had to learn discipline. My mom wasn't crazy. She wasn't unstable. She was surviving. The last entry in the last notebook stopped both of us cold. It wasn't about Mom at all. It was about me. Jenna's getting too old to let things slide. She argues like her mother. She looks at me like she knows. She needs correction before she infects Matthew. I can't even describe what that did to me. To know that I wasn't just imagining it all those years, the way he glared at me, the smack across the face when I mentioned crying behind that locked door. It wasn't my fault. It was his plan. Matt wanted to take the notebooks straight to the police. I wanted to set them on fire and never see them again. We didn't agree. We fought. And in the middle of it, I heard Sharon's laugh drift down the hall. She was on the phone with someone saying, "I'm telling you, they're digging where they shouldn't." I swear my blood ran cold. So yeah, that's where we are now. Sitting on evidence that could shatter what's left of my family, living in a house that feels like it's still breathing with him, and realizing Sharon might know more than she ever let on. And the worst part? Aunt Carol texted me this morning. "Don't go snooping. Your father had his reasons." I haven't replied, but I think I know what I have to do next. Matt didn't sleep. I could hear him pacing in the guest room across the hall, floorboards whining under his weight. I stayed awake too, staring at the ceiling. The last lines of Dad's notebook burned into my eyelids. By morning, Sharon was already in the kitchen, humming while she scrubbed the counters with bleach. The smell hit me like a wall when I came downstairs. "Morning, sweetie," she chirped, not looking up. "Couldn't sleep either. This place just needs a reset. A good deep clean." Her hands moved fast, too fast, scrubbing like she was trying to erase something that wasn't there. Matt walked in behind me, jaw tight, the notebooks tucked under his arm. "We need to talk," he said flatly. Sharon finally looked up. Her eyes flicked to the notebooks, then back to him. The smile didn't slip, but her knuckles whitened on the sponge. "Talk about what?" "You knew," he snapped. "Didn't you?" The kitchen went dead quiet. Sharon set the sponge down gently. "I don't know what you think you found down there, but Greg had his reasons. He always did." My stomach dropped. Matt slammed one of the notebooks onto the counter. It flipped open to a page covered in Dad's jagged handwriting. Sharon's gaze lingered on it, her face unreadable. "He was protecting you," she said softly. "Protecting us?" Matt's voice cracked into a laugh. "From what? Our mother? From Jenna?" Sharon's lips pressed into a line. "From chaos. From disobedience. He loved you in his way." "Bullshit," Matt exploded. He shoved the rest of the notebooks across the counter, pages fluttering like broken wings. "He was a monster, and you knew. You lived here, you slept in his bed, and you knew." Sharon's face flushed. "Watch your mouth." Matt leaned over the counter, his voice low and shaking. "If you try to bury this, I swear I'll make sure the whole town knows. Every neighbor, every church friend, every old buddy who showed up at the funeral to cry about what a good man he was. I'll put his filth on display." Something in Sharon snapped. She grabbed the notebook and tore a handful of pages straight out, shredding them with her nails. "You don't understand," she hissed, her voice trembling now. "Greg kept order. Without him, you'll destroy yourselves." I yanked the papers from her hands, fury surging through me. "You think this is order? Strapping Mom to a chair? Writing about disciplining us like we were animals?" Her eyes darted to me, wild and wet. "He was trying to save you." Before I could answer, Matt did something reckless. He grabbed the bleach bottle and upended it over the notebook pages. The ink smeared instantly, words dissolving into black puddles. Sharon shrieked and lunged for him, nails flashing. He shoved her back. She hit the cabinet with a dull thud, knocking a mug to the floor where it shattered. "Stop it!" I screamed, but neither of them did. Sharon scrambled to her feet, red-faced, clutching a shard of porcelain like a weapon. Matt stood his ground, chest heaving, daring her to try. And then, another sound. A phone buzzing on the counter. Aunt Carol's name lit up the screen. Sharon's hand hovered over it. She looked at us, then at the phone, and I saw it. The choice flickering across her face. Whether to cover for Greg one more time, or to call in his sister and unleash a storm neither of us could control. Sharon's hand hovered over the buzzing phone. Aunt Carol's name lit the screen again, the vibration rattling against the counter like a countdown. "Don't," Matt said, voice low, dangerous. Sharon's knuckles tightened around the shard of mug still in her grip. "She deserves to know. She'll help me fix this before you ruin everything." "Fix?" I snapped. My chest was burning, my voice sharp enough to cut glass. "You mean bury it, like you've been doing for years." The phone stopped buzzing. Silence fell like a curtain. Then, immediately, it started again. Sharon's eyes flicked toward it, and that split second was all Matt needed. He lunged, snatched the phone, and hurled it against the wall. Plastic cracked, screen shattering into a spiderweb. Sharon gasped, hand flying to her mouth. "You little bastard!" She rushed at him again. This time, I caught her arm mid-swing. The porcelain shard nicked my palm, stinging hot, but I held on. "Enough!" I shouted, shoving her back. She stumbled against the fridge, eyes wide, chest heaving. "You think people will believe you?" she hissed. "Greg's dead. Your mother's gone. It'll be your word against his memory. And I'll tell them what I know, how ungrateful you both are, how Elena abandoned you, how Greg kept this house together while she—" "Stop saying her name like that," I snapped. My whole body shook, but the words came out clear. "She didn't abandon us. She escaped him. And you helped him cover it up." For the first time, Sharon's mask slipped. Her face crumpled, not with guilt, but with rage. "You don't understand what loyalty is. That man gave me everything. He loved me." Matt barked a humorless laugh. "Yeah? Loved you enough to sew a key into his funeral suit? He didn't trust you either." Sharon's mouth opened, closed. The silence afterward was worse than the yelling. Then, knocking at the front door. Heavy, deliberate. Matt and I froze. Sharon straightened, wiping her hands on her dress, eyes darting between us. "That'll be Carol," she said, smoothing her hair, voice trembling but determined. "She knows." The knocking came again, harder this time. I grabbed Matt's arm. "We can't let her in." Sharon let out a sharp laugh, almost hysterical. "You think you can stop her? Carol will burn you alive to protect Greg. She's stronger than both of you put together." Matt's face was white, but his jaw set. He looked at me. "We have to show her. All of it. Put it in her hands, make her see what he really was." "She won't believe us," I whispered. "Then we make her believe." The knocking turned to pounding. Sharon moved toward the door like she was welcoming a savior. Matt darted to the hallway, yanked one of the sodden notebooks out from under his jacket, and shoved it into my hands. His eyes burned. "If we go down, we're taking his name with us." The pounding stopped. Silence. Then Carol's voice, muffled but sharp as a blade. "Open this door right now." Sharon's hand reached for the knob. And I realized this was it. Either we let Carol in and brace for war, or we burn Greg's legacy ourselves before she can rewrite it. Update 2. Okay. So a lot has happened since my last post. I thought things were bad when we found the notebooks. Turns out that was just the beginning. First off, I read your comments. Half of you were like, "Take it to the police now," and the other half said, "Don't bother, they'll cover it up, just torch the house." Both sides had me pacing holes in the carpet. But the one that hit me the hardest was someone who wrote, "Your dad controlled the story when he was alive. Don't let him control it when he's dead." That stuck. Because that's what this is really about. Control. Greg controlled the house, the basement, the story of our mom. He controlled us. And Sharon, Carol, they're still trying to guard his little kingdom of lies. So, here's what happened after Carol started banging on the door. Matt wanted to shove the notebooks in her face the second she walked in. I wanted to bolt the door and never let her in at all. But Sharon basically sprinted for the knob like she was saving the world, and suddenly Carol was inside, glaring at us with that same stone face Dad used when we were kids. She didn't even say hi. Just looked at the mess, the bleach-soaked pages, the broken mug, the blood on my hand, and sneered. "What have you two done?" Matt exploded. He waved one of the notebooks in her face, yelling about the chair in the basement, the straps, the notes about Mom, about me. Carol didn't flinch. She just crossed her arms and said, "Your father did what he had to do. Elena was weak. She left you. Greg stayed. End of story." That's when something inside me snapped. I walked to the hall table, grabbed the cracked wedding photo of Mom and Dad, and slammed it down on the counter between us. Glass shattered across the notebooks. "Look at her," I screamed. "Look at what he did to her. He broke her and you called her weak?" Carol's face twisted. For the first time, I saw fear there, just a flicker. And that's when I realized we had power. Not just because of what was in the basement, but because they knew too. They'd always known. I told Carol if she tried to spin this, If she called us liars, we'd go nuclear. Every notebook, every jar, every Polaroid, we'd drag it into the light. Social media, local news. Hell, I'd plaster the pages to the church doors if I had to. People would see who Greg really was. She went quiet. Sharon cried. And Matt, God bless him, picked up the torn pages and said, "You can't silence us anymore. He's dead, and we're not afraid of him. Or you." So yeah, that's where we are now. The house feels like a battlefield. Sharon won't leave, Carol's circling like a vulture, and Matt and I are sitting on these notebooks like live grenades. But here's the part I haven't told them yet. I scanned the worst pages last night. The entries about Mom, the one about me. I uploaded them to a private drive, just in case. Because if they try to shut us up again, I'm going to make sure Greg's name rots in public. And maybe, just maybe, that'll finally set my mother free. I didn't sleep that night. The house groaned like it was remembering. Sharon locked herself in Dad's old bedroom, probably clutching one of his flannel shirts and whispering to his ghost. Carol stayed planted in the living room chair, arms crossed, glaring at us like a guard dog. Matt and I sat at the kitchen table, whispering under the hum of the fridge. The notebooks, what was left of them, were spread out between us. "We can't wait," Matt said. His eyes were bloodshot, his voice raw. "She's going to call someone, Pastor Miller, Dad's old union buddies, whoever will listen. By morning, this place will be crawling with people telling us to shut up." He was right. Carol wasn't just a sister, she was an evangelist. Greg's memory was her religion, and she would drag us to the stake before letting us blaspheme. I pulled out my phone. The scanned pages glowed faintly on the screen. The one where he wrote about me, about correcting me, made my skin crawl. "We make them look," I whispered. "Not just read, look. He worshipped order? Fine. Let's show everyone his version of order." Matt leaned in. "What are you thinking?" By dawn, we had a plan. We carried the chair, the one bolted to the basement floor, up the stairs. It scraped and banged, waking Sharon, who came running, her face pale and streaked with tears. "What are you doing?" she cried. "Giving Dad the legacy he deserves," Matt spat, heaving the chair into the front yard. Carol stormed after us, shrieking, "Stop this madness!" But Matt didn't stop. He dragged the tray of rusted tools, dumped them next to the chair in the grass. The morning air was sharp and cold, and the sight of those straps glinting in the weak sun was worse than any nightmare. I stood there shaking, phone in my hand. And then I hit post. Photos of the chair, the notebooks, the torn Polaroid of Mom. I uploaded them to a neighborhood forum, tagged local reporters, even the town's Facebook page. Gregory Smith wasn't the man you thought he was. This is what he hid from us. Carol lunged at me, actually lunged, her hands clawing for my phone. Matt intercepted, shoving her back so hard she fell into the wet grass. She shrieked, spitting curses, scrambling up again, but it was too late. The post was live. Sharon collapsed on the porch steps, sobbing. "You've ruined everything," she whispered. "No," I said, my voice shaking but steady. "We ruined his story, not ours." Within minutes, my phone buzzed nonstop. Comments, shares. People who'd known Greg their whole lives, suddenly confronted with his order. Some called me a liar. Some said they always suspected something. Some just typed, "Oh my God." Carol was screaming now, pacing the yard, yelling that we were sick, ungrateful, betraying our father's memory. Neighbors peeked out from their windows, drawn by the noise, by the sight of that horrific chair standing in the middle of the yard like an exhibit. Matt looked at me, eyes wild, and for the first time since the funeral, I saw something like relief on his face. But deep down, I knew it wasn't over. Because exposing Greg wasn't just about the past. It was about surviving the people still living in his shadow. And Carol wasn't done fighting. Carol screamed until her voice cracked, pacing in the wet grass like a preacher gone mad. She pointed at the chair, at me, at Matt, shouting about betrayal, about family, about how we were spitting on Greg's grave. Neighbors gathered at the edges of their yards. Some whispered, some filmed. Nobody came to her defense. The sight of that chair, those straps, said more than our words ever could. Sharon sat slumped on the porch, sobbing into her hands. She wasn't screaming anymore. She just rocked back and forth, whispering Greg's name like a prayer. Matt lifted one of the rusted tools from the tray, a hammer with its head eaten by rust. He held it high, then smashed it against the chair. The crack echoed through the street. Leather straps snapped loose, bolts tore free from the wood. He hit it again, and again, until the chair collapsed into splinters. Carol shrieked, lunging forward, but I stepped between them. My voice came out calm, steady, in a way I hadn't felt in years. "It's over," I told her. She froze, chest heaving, eyes blazing with hate. But she didn't move again. I bent down and picked up the torn Polaroid of Mom, the one Dad had ripped in half. I pressed the broken photo against my chest and whispered, "He can't hurt us anymore." For a moment I thought Carol might strike me, but instead, she turned and stormed off toward her car, spitting curses, vowing this wasn't the end. Tires screeched as she sped down the street. Sharon stayed behind, silent, hollowed out. When she finally lifted her face, streaked with mascara, her voice was barely audible. "What will people say about him?" Matt answered before I could. "The truth." And with that, we carried the broken remains of the chair to the curb, left them there like trash. By the time we came back inside, my phone was buzzing nonstop. Messages from strangers, reporters, even old family friends. Some were angry, some apologetic, some shocked. But none of them were silent. Greg's order was gone. His secrets weren't locked away in the dark anymore. That night, I sat on the back porch, watching the last of the sun bleed out of the sky. The Polaroid rested in my lap. The half of Mom's face still visible smiled faintly, like she knew something I didn't. For the first time in years, I let myself believe she hadn't left me. She'd left him. And maybe, just maybe, if she was still alive out there, she could see this. She could see we weren't his prisoners anymore. Matt came outside, handed me a beer. Neither of us spoke for a long time. We didn't need to. The house creaked behind us, but it didn't feel alive anymore. It just felt old. Empty. And for the first time since I was a child, I wasn't afraid of it.